Okay, we're going live. I'd like to call the Comox Valley Regional District regular board meeting of Tuesday, July 28th to order. If members of the public wish to speak at a meeting, they should contact the CVRD Legislative Services Department to request to appear as a delegation. And there's live webcasts available on our website. We're on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, and today I'm going to read Article 14 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Indigenous peoples have the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions, providing education in their own languages in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. Indigenous individuals, particularly children, have the right to all levels and forms of education of the state without discrimination. State shall, in conjunction with Indigenous peoples, take effective measures in order for Indigenous individuals, particularly children, including those living outside their communities, to have access, when possible, to an education in their own culture and provided in their own language. And with that, we move on to B, the in-camera meeting.
I'll move that recommendation. Second.
Thank you. And the recommendation is that the board adjourn to an in-camera session pursuant to the following subsection of Section 90 of the Community Charter: 91C, labor relations or employee negotiations; 91G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the regional district; and finally, that the in-camera portion convene immediately following the open portion of the meeting. And we're on to adoption of minutes. Oh, do we, is there anyone who opposes moving in camera after the meeting? Seeing and hearing none, that passes. We're on to adoption of minutes from July 14th.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of those minutes? Or anyone opposed to adoption of minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that carries. And we're on to reports. Electoral Area Service Committee from July 13th. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed to receipt of the minutes from July 13th? Hearing and seeing none, that passes, and we're on to recommendation 1.
Move recommendation 1.
Second.
Thank you, and I'll just pass it to Lisa to summarize the recommendation.
Okay, so that the board approved development variance permit DV1B20 to reduce the minimum rear yard setback to allow residential use of an existing accessory building at 136 Croto Road.
And this is a vote of the areas. Director Grieve, Director Arbor, Director Hamir.
In favor.
That carries. And we're on to recommendation 2. Thank you. And again, I'll ask Lisa to summarize.
So that the board give first and second reading to bylaw number 619, being rural Comox Valley zoning bylaw number 520/2019, amendment number 5, which rezones property from country residential 1 to country residential 1, exception 11 at 2491 Emerson Road, and that the board waive the holding of the public hearing.
Again, this is a vote of the areas. Director Grieve,
In favor.
Director Arbor, Director Hamir. Director Hamir.
Sorry, in favor. Is my volume okay?
Yep, we can hear you now. Thank you. That carries. And we're on to recommendation 3. And the recommendation is that up to $5,000 in funding from the Area A Bain Sound Feasibility Study Service Function 151 be approved to support the Union Bay Improvement District conversion study public engagement process, with the funds to be assigned from the $55,689 in unallocated professional fees budgeted for 2020. And this is a vote of the full board. Director Grieve,
In favor?
Director Arbor, Director Hamir,
In favor?
Director Swift, Director Grant,
In favor.
Director Cole Hamilton,
In favor?
Director Morin, Director Hillian,
In favor.
Director Frisch. And that's unanimous. Thank you. And we're on to item 2, Sewage Commission receipt of July 14 minutes. And is there anyone opposed to receipt of those minutes? Hearing none, that's carried. And we're on to item 3, Comox Valley Water Committee minutes from July 14th. Thank you. Okay, Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I just noticed that on the minutes, the signature header still indicates Director Frisch as the chair.
That's on purpose.
Is it?
I just like it.
It's a-
No, I pass it on. There was some real legal ramifications.
Staff just informed me that it's already been corrected. Thank you, Director Hillian. And is there anyone opposed to receipt of those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that passes. And we're on to item 4, Comox Valley Sports Center Commission minutes from July 14th. Thank you. Anyone opposed to receipt of those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, we're on to item 5, Director's Report, January 1st to December 31st. Thank you. This is just a follow-up report from Director Cole Hamilton for last year's external appointments. Any comments or questions? Anyone opposed to receipt? Hearing and seeing none, that carries. So we are on to item 6, the public engagement strategy for the CVRD's COVID-19 response and renewal plan. Thank you. I'll pass it over to staff.
Yes, Chair and Directors, James Warren and Christian Weiler are here to provide a presentation of this report and answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Russell. Good afternoon, directors. And along with Chris Janwile and myself, we're presenting today the public engagement strategy for the COVID-19 response and renewal framework. I'll begin with a brief overview of the renewal plan itself. Chris Jan will then describe the board's principles from the renewal plan, as well as the basis for the key actions in the engagement strategy. And then I'll summarize with a focus on the strategic planning session to be held in September. So you recognize this graphic. In May, the board approved a response and renewal framework. And this slide illustrates the various components and emphasizes that the board's strategic drivers continue to play a critical role in defining the ways in which CVRD services are delivered. The strategic drivers being fiscal responsibility, community and social well-being, responding to the climate crisis, and Indigenous relations are so valuable for guiding service delivery and placing greater emphasis on the activities that support the drivers. The review itself will dig into each of our services and look for efficiencies, opportunities to partner, or ways to adjust our processes. As you've already seen for the finance and administration, transit, water, recreation, and the regional growth strategy as core services, we will present ideas and concepts resulting from the review. And in the coming weeks, you'll also see the findings that are associated with the electoral area services, emergency programs, and the sewer core services. All of these reports and the various elements supported are then for consideration at the September strategic planning session.
Do you take questions now? Because Director Hamir has her
Yeah,
hand
certainly
raised.
can take questions as we go.
I was going to wait till the end, but I just wanted to get in the queue. Sorry.
Great.
Okay.
And then Lisa, next slide. Perfect. Yep, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Starting with our key drivers as a foundation and then applying the 5 key principles from the renewal framework, we've sought to highlight those issues that we feel are most relevant to the public. We have many staff reports coming forward in the next couple of months, and that volume of information can be overwhelming in a public-facing report. So we feel it's important that we provide the community with clear and concise information on those issues that will resonate most. A clear title, tagline, and action items will provide directors and staff with key messaging and will anchor our communications and explain what we're doing and why. The staff report does suggest some key deliverables under each of those action points, and those are more placeholders. We understand that they will be adjusted as we move through this process and the board moves through its strategic planning process in the fall. But essentially what we're looking for today from you is your endorsement of this title, Rethink Comox Valley, the tagline, a thoughtful review of services to support community recovery, and these 4 key action items that are focused around keeping services affordable, streamlining processes, protecting quality of life, and caring for the community. And then the specific deliverables will live underneath each one of these action items. And by approving this today, this will simply allow us to move forward and get started on some of those elements, particularly around graphic design, so that we can work on some infographics and laying out that report. So we'll be able to move forward quickly once the board's direction is decided in the fall. And I'll pass it off to James now to speak about next steps.
So as I've already mentioned, you've seen a few renewal reports on our core services and can expect to see a few more in the coming weeks. Those reports are forming the basis for the September strategic planning session. And that session is intended to understand and explore the principles and key projects associated with the CVRD's 8 core services. Having a sound strategic plan that represents the board's broad interest enables a focused service delivery plan that addresses specific issues. A strategic plan helps ensure a dedicated application of valuable and limited resources, be it time, money, or people. Given the current and ongoing global pandemic, while respecting that the board continues to place emphasis on its strategic drivers, the September strategic session is meant to help define the CVRD's service delivery in light of the impacts that COVID-19 is having on the Comox Valley. The engagement plan outlines the proposed rollout of information to the public and our stakeholders once the renewal plan has been endorsed by the board in October. And then finally, speaking to the 2 additional recommendations that are in the staff report, one being to send a letter to the Comox Valley Economic Development Society, and then a second letter to the Comox Strathcona Regional Hospital District. These recommendations speak to the importance of collaborating between the CVRD and our partners. A successful response and renewal plan needs the support and alignment with our partners. And Chair Kettler, we're available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Director Hamir?
Right, thank you to staff and great work. I really do like the tagline and the idea that this is going to be a thoughtful approach. My question is, I guess, both to staff and to the rest of the board around if folks think that our key principles that we've outlined in this planning, if you see any kind of conflict with the drivers, I'm thinking specifically around climate change versus fiscal responsibility, and whether, I know one of the recommendations is to write a letter to CVEDs, sort of confirming that this is the direction that we want to go. But I don't know if it's ever been communicated to that service, specifically about our drivers and how that will impact the delivery of economic development projects. So again, a pretty big question, maybe that for staff or for anyone else on the board to kind of get into.
Over to staff.
Thank you very much. One of the purposes of the proposed recommendation for your consideration of writing to CVEDs is just to clarify the importance of the task force in being an element of the renewal plan for the regional district. And that really opens the door for us to describe how we've come about our priorities and principles that you have presented to us. So I see that communication being the introduction of that. And we as staff can help inform their staff and their board by all means with the support of your chair as to the meaning and significance of this process.
I was going to add to that the potential for conflict between the driver of responding to the climate crisis and fiscal responsibility. I think that it's valuable to have both drivers in place, and that it provides some ability to balance off the importance of each. I think if you only had fiscal responsibility and did not speak to the climate crisis, then we would be having our main focus be on fiscal responsibility. But by having both, we can try to find that balance and present programs and services that try to meet that for the board's interest.
Thanks. Director Arbor, Director Hillian, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay with this paraphernalia? Thanks. Just a little clarification from staff. I don't believe we've yet risen and reported on our engagement with CVEDs. So we're not really at liberty to talk about the process that went on there and some of the aspects that may relate to this particular question. Is that correct?
The board will be considering that matter tonight and providing some clarity to us.
Right. So I think that I would certainly, I think it's an excellent question that Director Hamir has raised, but I think we'd be in a better position to speak to it once we've had the opportunity to address the ongoing relationship question. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Arbor.
Oops, sorry. Thank you. So, yeah, building a bit on what Director Amira said, like for me, I like this report, but some of I like the tagline, Rethink Comox Valley, but I do think the strategic driver get lost a little bit, our old ones. And I guess it's kind of normal because we started with broad consensus around climate change, reconciliation, community partnerships, fiscal responsibility, which in my mind are all proving to be very apt at meeting the challenges of COVID. And then we entered into a renewal process, which set its own set of principles around the review of services. But I just feel like the last month or two, it hasn't, like those principles in the review of services have not as much, to me, it's put the four strategic drivers a little bit in the background, and heading into a strategic session or, in September and October, I don't know if we need to retest those drivers with the board or whether we actually want to put them on steroids and really reaffirm them and move forward in a high fashion in light of COVID. So it's just the documents for the public is good, but for me as board member, I still have some questions that I'd like to see resolved around how we're going to play between what is essentially not as much as rethink as a review of our services, and the rethink, while we have thought about our four strategic drivers, and I don't know if we want to rethink them or we don't want to just move forward with affirmative action on them. So that's my feedback, but otherwise it looks quite good.
Thank you. Director Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So also appreciate the report. I was wondering if you could show me again what the graphic that we were going to go out to the public with, because I don't know that the one you showed was maybe different than the one in the report. Is that my understanding right? Because you had the tagline, which I actually don't see in the report.
So in the staff report on the first page of the public engagement plan, it's page 4 of 10 of our PDF. That's the original response and renewal framework graphic.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
Is that going to go to the public?
It's publicly available. It's part of our website that describes our renewal plan and strategy. What we're looking for today is some support and interest from the board on the title and tagline, the key actions, and then we'll be able to develop some additional graphic material that will support then the renewal plan.
Can I see it again? The rethink that you put it up. It was one of your first slides.
Oh, okay. Lisa, can we get the PowerPoint?
Sorry about that.
Again? That's okay.
Just because it did have 4 things under it.
the key actions. Yeah.
Because I would agree with Daniel that I don't necessarily want to lose the work we did last time. I think it's still very relevant. And so if that's what we're going with, I guess it's still there. Is that what you're thinking, James?
So the strategic drivers being those 4 icons in the bottom left,
Yeah.
they are still fundamental to the renewal and the response and renewal framework.
Yeah.
They are what we've built the current financial plan on. We would, subject to the board changing these drivers, we would certainly use them to base the future financial plans on, the strategic plan on. This slide speaks to the key actions on the right-hand side: keeping services affordable, streamlining processes, protecting quality of life, and caring for the community as those key actions under which we would want to speak to the response activities through the work we've been doing.
Yeah.
So, and Christian, do you want to expand on some of these key actions? Our engagement plan does speak to a bit more detail on the key actions. Put you on the spot.
Oh,
There we go. So essentially what this would do when we're thinking about this in terms of a report is these 4 actions would be the pillars under which we would organize the information. So we have a bunch of information that's being brought forward under a number of renewal staff reports that you will be discussing as a board in determining your direction. Based on those staff reports coming forward, the 4 key drivers and the principles in the framework that the board has identified, we have come up with these 4 action items as a way to organize that information. So we've provided some examples that are, as James pointed out, more placeholders, but we have examples in the engagement plan. For example, some of the items that might come under the protect the quality of life topic, for example, could be asset management for key infrastructure to manage costs today and in the future, delivering clean, safe drinking water, addressing the environmental issues at the Willamar Bluffs through the liquid waste management plan, or maintaining parks and recreation facilities to keep residents healthy and active. So those are some of the issues that we know are important to the community that we would see could be communicated under that pillar. So the engagement plan does provide several examples of each, but those would be adapted depending on your direction. But what we would see, what we're asking today is for your endorsement of these 4 pillars that would form the basis of the report.
yeah, and that's great. I can support all that, and I just like Director Arbor's idea of keeping on those 4 those other 4 drivers that we've endorsed in the past until we decide to change them, so that they're also front and center. I think would be wise. But I will shift gears to the second recommendation, and that's on the taxation for the hospital district. Is that appropriate at this time, Chair? Because I obviously have spoken about this at the Strathcona RD, I forget what the board's called right now, the hospital board, but it didn't get a lot of traction. And so I guess I'm looking around this board wondering if there's any support for that when we get to the next board. If we're going to take that forward as a possible way to save taxation. So I've spoken about it in the past. I don't know if I need to reiterate myself on it.
Yeah, let's just wait until we get to that
Oh,
recommendation.
my apologies. Yeah.
Director Hamir.
Thank you. Just one consideration on the title. Sometimes the term rethink means that you're backing up and going in a different direction. I just want to sort of point that out, that I don't know if that's what we actually want to convey, especially around our drivers. And I was trying to think of another word, and I don't want to hold up this process. If folks are fine with rethink, I'm okay with it as well. But a word maybe like recharge instead of backing up. You know, we are, because the thinking and the thoughtful, I do like, but rethink in general kind of has a negative connotation. And I just want to sort of point out that I think we're doubling down on our 4 drivers that what I'm hearing around the table is that we don't want to lose them. We're not going in a different direction, but we're, focusing a little bit more strategically. So just putting that out there.
Can we go back to the slide with those 4 terms? So, sorry, Director Hamir, where was the rethink part?
In the title,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
because that I guess will be it'll frame the forward, going, this is the campaign. So, yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if we're using those 4 check marks statements there to organize things. Is there going to be difficulty for staff with overlap between protection, quality of life, and care for community? Is that kind of too much of an overlap for people to be able to tease out the different parts of the report?
I think these 4 headings come naturally to us, having reviewed the renewal reports that have come forward thus far and the actions that have been adopted by the various committees. And also when I begin to look at those that are coming forward, such as the Electoral Area Services Committee and Sewage Commission, it's really these 4 titles that best describe the types of actions that are being presented to you, the board, in terms of your reaction to COVID and how you've reviewed your services, and either are confirming that you're taking the actions necessary, or have modified the way you're doing services or otherwise in consideration of COVID to move the community forward. So these are really titles. The thing that we were wrestling with is, how do you give mileage and how do you explain easily to the public when you have 100 or 200 different actions, right? So what we've kind of done is consider the potential of what those actions will be. What are 3 or 4 kinds of titles to it that will then best illustrate the types of actions that you're taking that will come forward to you in your strategic planning process after all the committees and commissions have done their renewal planning for you.
Thanks for that. Dr. Cole-Hamilton, were you next?
I'm not sure if Dr.
Jones?
Hilliam was, but okay.
The names are all mixed up on the screen, so I can't see.
Like my mic is live, so maybe I'll just go ahead. Without wanting to wordsmith by committee, I think perhaps renew Comox Valley, given that's a word we've used quite a lot, and perhaps avoids the idea that we're rethinking in terms of backing up and taking a fully different direction. And I guess the thought was in terms of public communication, and I may have missed this during the discussion, are we going to communicate our 4 drivers and these 4 criteria in the same, and we're going to integrate the 2 of them? Because I mean, essentially, fiscal responsibility and keeping services affordable are largely overlapping, and community and social well-being and care for the community are essentially overlapping. Anyway, I'd be interested in seeing what the communication would be to make sure that that the general public see how these various criteria, some of which are overlapping and some of which aren't, relate to each other, and the fact that, say, Indigenous relations is only mentioned once, whereas keeping services affordable is mentioned on both columns. Just how the relative weighing out of things. It seems like we're putting half of our eggs into 2 baskets, which is just fiscal responsibility and care for the community, given they both appear twice. Anyway, you are taking down what we said at our meetings. It was we who came up with those sort of 4 general headings in our discussions. It's just more a matter of communicating the interplay between 2 different sets of 4 qualities that I think will be the challenge in communicating. And I guess that's something we'll see more about going forward then. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Madam Chair, maybe if it helps to distinguish protect quality of life and caring for the community, protecting quality of life, a lot of the examples of things that are coming out it's the water treatment facility, it's the liquid waste management plan. Probably it's more about the environment and actions you're taking in that regard. Caring for the community, many of the actions are, for instance, your RGS renewal. It's the poverty reduction strategy, continuing with the work that will come from the
Housing.
residential housing, the housing review study. A lot of the RGS work is coming under that, protecting the quality of the life, or pardon me, caring for the community, our association with community groups, working with Lush, providing services and support to those groups.
Community and social well-being in the left-hand side, and then care for the community on the right-hand side. It just seems that some of our strategic drivers are reflected one for one on the right-hand side, and some are not. And anyway, I imagine that will all become clearer. But it appears that care for the community and fiscal responsibility are present on both sides of the and others not. Anyway, that's the overlap I was talking about. And
I thank you for your comments, and I just wanted to point out two things. The first being that these things absolutely do overlap, and I think that that's a positive. If we had 4 drivers and then we came out with 5 principles under the COVID renewal strategy that completely did not match, then this would have been a much more difficult exercise. So again, when we talk about these 4 pillars, they do overlap, and I would say it's more of a way to be able to take the drivers and what was provided as the framework, which is the new lens in which we view those drivers and the staff reports that are coming forward. And it's a way to organize the information in the reporting for the public, but it doesn't diminish the importance of the drivers, and the drivers would be discussed as part of that overall plan. They won't be lost, but if this is, these pillars are here because we have tried to apply the framework and the 5 principles within the framework, and that's the result of what you see on the screen today.
Thanks, Christian. Director Hillian, can you press your mic again?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak in favor of keeping the wording as is. I think that there's always some risk that words will be misunderstood. They do have meaning, but it's the contextual information that I think is the important part. And as long as all of our material speaks to the importance of the original drivers, then I don't think whether we say rethink or review or reconsider or reframe, somebody's going to find something wrong with all of those. But to me, the process that we're going through is about, it's a thoughtful review of how do we keep services affordable, streamline processes, protect quality of life, and care for the community, given the context of our 4 drivers and given the reality of the pandemic. And that's essentially what we're trying to do. And what will really be the determining factor of what people think of it will be any actions that come out. And that's where I think we can be criticized if we strayed from the original drivers as our guiding principles. Thanks.
Good point. Thank you. Director Frisch?
Yeah, I was going to actually say that I also thought the wording was maybe a bit of a step back, and maybe a word like strengthening or supporting might be more what we're trying to do. But again, I'm not going to fight too hard to change the wording if other people don't want to change it.
Director Morin?
Great, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think there's as many titles or taglines as there are people in this room and more. So, you know, I don't have as much of an issue with that, but I do think that if we have Indigenous relations as one of our pillars, that we should have some language underneath the key actions that specifically reflect that, because I think all the other ones, fiscal responsibility, community and social well-being, and climate crisis, all of those have language that reflects those within those 4 key actions, but Indigenous relations doesn't so much. So I would suggest that we have some specific, something that relates to that, so that we're not just putting it in, not putting meaning behind it, I guess. Thanks.
Is it possible, so we're using those 4 as a structure to lay out information, but then within care for the community, that we could also have a highlight on Comox First Nation related issues? Thank you. Any further discussion?
Well, I was just going to,
Director Frisch?
sorry, I was just going to reinforce that mentioning our partnerships under that heading might be what we're looking for.
Thank you. Okay, we're still on receipt. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? And that's carried. And there's a recommendation 1. Thank you. And it's that the Comox Valley Regional District approve the public engagement strategy for the CVRD's COVID-19 response and renewal plan as attached to the staff report dated July 22nd, 2020. Any further discussion? Director Morin?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to staff, because I know this board can be quite, we have a lot of wordsmiths here, and I think we can really get into the weeds on this. And I just want to say thank you so much, because I know it was a lot of work, and you did really reflect, I think, accurately where we're coming from, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you. And Director Arbor?
Yeah, I'll just do a mild vote down in terms of my vote, and it's not, I think it's just a flag, because I was listening to Dr. Hamilton, and I think it starts to be too complex a story we're trying to tell with 8 different things, strategic drivers, pillars, If it's not clear to me and it's meant to be a public engagement strategy, I just can't vote for it. So just on that basis.
Director Frisch?
Yeah, and just in that vein, it's my understanding that our 4 initial drivers, those are more branding than anything, and we're not necessarily going to give a whole bunch of play to those, but they'll be prominently portrayed. Would that be correct?
I think the drivers, the 4 strategic drivers from last year's strategic plan session, we don't lose sight of those. Those are still the board's strategic drivers, and they're how we interpret work plans and how we present materials to you with those 4 strategic drivers in mind. The key actions that we just looked at, that's how we're organizing information to communicate clearly and simply and describe the 100 or 200 various different activities in a simple way. So I think the emphasis of the communications is around those key actions, recognizing that the strategic drivers are still the fundamental principles that the board is following.
Okay, well, I can certainly support that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very broad scope, all the different services and all the different items that will come up that have been reviewed under those services. So we really need a way to fine tune that and you know, for messaging for the public. And I think that having those 4 terms is a good way to do that. And if staff are clear on what those entail and are able to fit everything that they need to under those, then I'm comfortable with that. So we are on recommendation 1, and it's a vote of the full board. Oh,
Yeah.
Dr. Cole Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say, first of all, if I didn't say before, thank you. I know this is complex distilling all of this. And just as I understand it, and James, you're just expressing it, it sounds like our drivers are what one might think of as the difference between strategy and tactics. Our strategy and the the 4 things that are on the right-hand side are more tactics, how you implement your strategy. Would that be that's the, because obviously I hear what Director Arbor says, and we obviously do want it to be clear. If we can't clarify it amongst ourselves, then we're probably not going to be able to explain it to the public. And if that's the distinction we're going for, then I think that helps, at least for me, to make a meaningful distinction between how they interact with each other. Anyway, it sounds like you've heard the sort of the questions that we have, and so on that basis, I think I look forward to seeing the next iteration. See this, it's necessary to engage all those factors you've got there, and it's just complicated to communicate it to people. So thanks.
Yeah, just to round that out, I guess it is important to know that this is an iterative process as well, and the strategic planning session will build on what we have been doing. The October renewal plan, which we would be presenting following strategic planning, will be the culmination of that work through strategic planning. What we talked about today, the key actions will be encompassed in that public communications material. So. And we're also coming back in mid-August to talk about more renewal reports, late August to have a report back on other elements that have come up since then. So this is very much an iterative process where we will refine and improve as we go along. So the conversation is very helpful.
Dr. Fish.
Yeah, just a suggestion, Chair, when you call the question, could we do so with a show of hands, and then you can tackle the Zoomers separately?
Yes.
Thanks.
Director Grieve. Director Arbor.
I just meant all at once, like all in favor.
Oh. Okay. And then report it back to Arzina. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll all go through the roll. So please turn on your microphones to respond. Director Grieve.
I would be in favor of a deferral motion on this because it's quite complex and I think it needs a little more thought. We have deadlines coming up, but we have other meetings as well. So I don't know if I'd be supported on that, but it seems to me that maybe a little more thought could be put into this. Thank you.
So a motion to table then, or defer to the next meeting. Is there a seconder for deferral?
What would the point of a deferral be? What would we do?
Okay, if there's no second, I'll continue. Director Arbor? Oh. Director Hamir?
In favor.
Do you wish to speak, Director Moore?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
We're voting on the deferral right now?
No.
Oh,
No, there
okay,
was no
sorry.
second for deferral.
Okay,
So this is back to the regular motion
thanks.
of approval of the strategy. Director Hamir, sorry, I didn't catch that.
I'm in favor of the recommendation.
Thank you. Director Swift?
In favor.
Director Grant?
In favor.
Director Cole Hamilton?
In favor.
Director Moore?
In favor.
Director Hillian?
In favor.
Director Frisch? And I'm also in favor. He said, oh, sorry, I took that as a no vote. Director Grieve?
I will stand by my learning colleague.
Okay. Thank you. That carries. And we're on to recommendation 2. Thank you. And that recommendation is that the letter be sent to the Comox Valley Economic Development Society, reinforcing the importance of the Economic Recovery Task Force to find ways to support community recovery for all small businesses, tourism, and industry in the Comox Valley, and requesting their endorsement of the specific timeline and deliverables as proposed. Sir, Director Grieve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be proposing an amendment to this motion. I think that it should read that a letter be sent to the co-chairs of the Economic Recovery Task Force Steering Committee and the Comox Valley Economic Development Society The reason being that the task force is a child of this board, and that the steering committee is driving the work here. The CVEDS is assigned to a secretarial role, so it's appropriate they get the same letter. But the steering committee, the steering committee includes bodies outside this board, like 19 Wing and Comox First Nation. As well, Cumberland is not a part of the CVEDS. So I think it's only appropriate that we include the driver for this economic recovery, which is the task force steering committee as well. Thank you.
So the amendment is that we send a letter to CVEDS, but also to the co-chairs of the steering committee of the Economic Recovery Task Force. And it's been seconded. Director Frisch?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I would support this if we carbon copy this to the task force. And anyone else, we think it should be carbon copied to. But I think it should go directly to CVEDS. Would that be your intent?
Thank you. No, I think it's important that 2 letters go out, because as I say, CVEDS is strictly the secretariat in this process. So it's important that they get the letter, but it's even more important, I think, that the steering committee task force get this letter reaffirming that our drivers and our strategic planning here, because not everybody's privy to that. And as I say, I speak to Comox First Nation, 19 Wing, and the Village of Cumberland.
Okay, so that letter be sent to both CVEDS and the co-chairs of the steering committee. Director Morin?
Yeah, just some clarification. So timeline for when this letter is to be sent, and clarification on the timeline and deliverables as proposed. Is there some specifics on what that is?
In the staff report, you'll note that there's a timeline or a matrix that sort of provides the time frame for certain things, and there's reference to the task force work. So we just want to confirm the board. The suggestion here is that the board confirm that that's reasonable. So this amendment to include the task force is a good thing to do as well.
So they would get all that information
Yep,
within that
they would
letter?
get this report, and I believe it's page 8 of 10. It's the
Okay.
milestones that has
Right.
reference to the task force and timelines for delivery.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Yeah, Chair, I have a quick one.
Director Frisch?
So on that timeline, it's milestones. It's on, I think it's on page 5. Is that correct? Page 5. So under announcement, TBC to be considered, I guess, confirmed, right? So they would be picking the timeline, because it's not highlighted or darkened or anything. Okay, so we're asking them to come back to us with a plan. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so on recommendation 2, it's a vote of the whole board. Right, on the amendment, which added the co-chairs of the steering committee to the letter. Director Grieve?
In favor.
Director Arbor? Director Hamir?
In favor?
Director Swift?
In favor?
Director Grant?
In favor?
Director Cole-Hamilton?
In favor?
Director Morin?
In favor?
Director Hillian?
In favor.
And Director Frisch? And that's unanimous. Thank you. We're on to recommendation 3. Oh, sorry. Yeah, to make the amendment. So that was for the amendment. So now we're going back to the motion as amended. Thank you. And we'll go through the roll again. Director Grieve?
In favor.
Director Arbor? Director Hamir?
In favor?
Director Swift?
In favor?
Director Grant? Director Cole-Hamilton?
In favor?
Director Morin?
In favor.
Director Hillian,
In favor.
Director Frisch. And that's carried. Thank you. Now we're on to recommendation 3. And it's that a letter be sent to the Comox Strathcona Regional Hospital District encouraging strategic review of future service level needs with the completion of the Comox Valley and Campbell River Hospital builds and funding requirements known with consideration of property tax requisition levels and required reserve balance levels to meet future service objectives. Any comments or questions? Director Grieve?
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. I question the appropriateness of this because the regional hospital is a distinct board all its own, and it has its own ability to raise taxes and proportionately, we are part of it. But I know how much this board is thrilled when we go to a solid waste committee meeting, we find out that our neighbors to the north have already discussed it and made up their mind about something. So I don't think it's really the time or place to bring this forward. I think we'd be much better to bring this forward at the appropriate board and discuss it in open session with the entire hospital board, rather than deciding amongst ourselves and bringing it. I just see that as sort of sticking in the craw of our friends to the north. So I just would think that this is inappropriate for this board to bring us forward. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the reason the staff are bringing forward this recommendation is that it is in your renewal plan and framework adopted by this board that you do reach out to each one of your partners, those organizations that you share services with. That includes the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board, for which you have sent a letter and request and they endorsed consideration of their services to find efficiencies. It includes the Comox Strathcona Hospital Board, for which this letter will go to, and letters have been sent to North Island 911, and I believe something is in the works with respect to the Vancouver Island Regional Library, because all of those are cost centers for your taxpayers that you don't have direct control over. So it's not telling those organizations what to do, but it's saying that this board has endorsed a renewal framework in which they are a partner to help to find relief or ways of doing things differently. So it's not making a decision, it's just merely asking them for their consideration and a decision to be made at the appropriate level.
Thank you. Director Frisch?
Yeah, thanks again. So with respect to the director's comments, I do think it's worthwhile having a discussion if possible. I obviously had brought this up at the Comox Strathcona Hospital Board, and it didn't see a lot of support, and that was before COVID. I was concerned about the excess taxation. I'm perhaps even more concerned now. So I'd like to support this and see if we can move it forward at the hospital board. And I'll add that it's obviously in the interest of our taxpayers here in the Valley, but when we get to the hospital board, I think there's a good argument to be made that it's in the best interest of all the jurisdictions and all the ratepayers on the North Island that we deal with at that level. So thanks.
Thank you. Director Arbour?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I did hear Dr. Grieve's concern, and I think that he's probably right as to how this may well play out when it actually comes to that board. But I'm actually in favor of doing this in the sense that it will generate conversation. It is true that this board has approved our renewal plan, which tries to bring elements of reviewing each of our services. Obviously, this is one that's a separate board, but quite affiliated. The CEO's comment, I don't think we're going to start writing to every tax body out there and the province and the federal government and everybody else with suggestions, although we could. But in terms of local government services, this is one that indeed taxpayers put in quite a bit around here and that we have some control over. I think it will generate discussion. I think some members won't receive it that well, and that's okay, because it is just for consideration. I was one of the people that voted to maintain this requisition last time, so I will have a lot of empathy for people, but sometimes if it doesn't get sometimes you need triggers for these types of review, and we don't have a lot of hospital board meetings, and we haven't assigned something like that. So I think a letter from the CVRD board asking for consideration is appropriate, and it can be debated. And at the end of the day, that board can tell us that they are not interested, or they may say, hey, not a bad idea.
Thank you. Director Hamir, do you still have a question?
Well, Director Arbor pretty much took the words out of my mouth, so I don't really have much else to add. But I was thinking in the very same direction that I don't really see this as a decision that we're making and forcing upon the hospital board. It's we're asking for a review, and I mean we're asking, we're not telling. So I'll be voting in support of.
Thank you. Director Hillian? Could you turn on and off your mic again? It seems to be a sound issue.
Thank you. That's better. I just wanted to point out that following the direction of this board, the chair and CAO did in fact reach out to the chair and vice chair of the hospital board. I know because I was at that meeting. And so it shouldn't come as a surprise. The letter, in fact, will just reinforce the questions that were raised at that time. And I trust our staff to write the letter in such a cordial and diplomatic fashion that it won't raise too much ire, other than what might normally be expected at that board.
Yes, I did have a conversation with both chairs of the Waste Management and Hospital Board. And it was both of them are quite amicable. So hopefully that'll follow through to the board in general. Any further comments or questions? Okay, so we're on recommendation 3, and it's a vote of the full board. Director Grieve? Director Arbor? Director Hamir?
In favor, although I didn't hear what those last 2 comments were.
Director Swift? Director Grant?
Yes, a mild yes is still a yes.
Director Cole Hamilton?
In favor.
Director Mooring?
I'm in favor. I just wanted to tell Director Hamir that the only thing we're asking
Director Hillian?
In favor.
Director Frisch? Director Hamir, can you hear the other directors?
No, I can't. So I was just going to say that just for the vote, the volume has gone.
Okay, we're just going to try and figure that out.
Hello, hello.
Yep. Okay, heard that.
But that last vote.
In favor.
There you go.
The last vote was unanimous.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chair, just as a point of order, I know that it's all in good fun and we don't want to get too formal, but I don't know whether it's a great practice to get into allowing editorial comment at the same time as votes. Just my thoughts.
Yes, well, I wasn't going to repeat them, and the microphones weren't working, so I wasn't too worried about it. Okay, so we're on to bylaws and resolutions.
I just have one correction there, ABC.
Okay.
I'll move that bylaw 619 be given first and second readings.
What was that? Okay.
Second.
Thank you. That's for first and second reading. Any comments or questions? And there's a correction. It does say all, but it's actually a vote of the areas. So I'll go through the roll. Director Grieve?
In favor.
Director Arbor?
In favor?
Director Hamir.
In favor.
That's unanimous. Thank you. And we're on to final adoption of bylaw 617, the sewage service expansion principles bylaw.
I'll move that. I'll second it.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Okay, and it's a vote of Courtney and Comox. So I'll go through the roll. Director Swift,
In favor.
Director Grant,
In favor.
Director Cole Hamilton,
In favor.
Director Moran,
In favor.
Director Hillian,
In favor?
Director Frisch.
In favor.
That's unanimous. Thank you. And we are on to new business. The Affordable Housing Society letter of support.
Move.
Second.
Thank you. And it's correspondence from Ron Weber around the Comox Valley Affordable Housing Society. Are staff going to speak to it or?
We were asked just to reach out to the town of Comox, which we did, and confirm that there was that they were aware of it and supportive of this project.
Director Hillian?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the staff for bringing this forward. I also appreciate the following CAO recommendation, which speaks to ensuring the support of the Coalition to End Homelessness. I'm not entirely clear whether the Affordable Housing Society is in fact part of the Coalition to End Homelessness, and I think it might be useful for us to assure that there's at least some awareness of each other's activities, and I'm just curious whether staff have reached out in that regard as yet, or if that's something yet to be done.
Yet to be done, we will. And generally speaking, we've always referred these matters to them. Sometimes they've provided input, other times not. So we'll seek their input and go from there.
Thank you. And I think it might be helpful if the Affordable Housing Society actually attaches or becomes a member of the coalition. Of course, that'd be up to them, because there are some resources and advantages to that engagement, particularly given that they appear to be going through some reorganization and having some challenges right now. And so having the support of other parts of the community, I think, would be useful. And clearly, we want to support seniors housing. It's one of the key areas where we have a significant deficit in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Grant.
Yeah, so this did come to the town of Comox and we sent a letter of support on this. I also talked to Ron Weber on this, and they have been in touch with the Coalition to End Homelessness, so that's happening. And I can't remember if they told me if they were members or not, but they've been closely aligned with them. So I think everybody's singing out of the same hymn book here.
Okay, and we're on receipt. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Okay, that's carried.
Second.
And the recommendation is that the board provide a letter to support as requested by Ron Weber, Comox Valley Affordable Housing Society, pending the support of the Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. Any further comments?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Director Hamir.
Thank you. I just noticed on the letter that they asked that we write something regarding their ability to build new housing. And although I totally agree and concur with Director Hillian's comments of how much we need seniors affordable housing, that line particularly kind of tweaked my, I don't know much about this organization and their capacity to build a new property. Are staff at all concerned with that kind of wording?
I propose that the letter would be a letter of support, but not speak to the capacity or otherwise that we don't know or understand. So I suggest that the letter would not go to that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, this is a vote of the full board. Director Grieve,
Yes.
Director Arbor, Director Hamir,
In favor.
Director Swift,
In favor.
Director Grant,
In favor.
Director Cole Hamilton,
In favor.
Director Moran,
In favor.
Dr. Hillian,
In favor.
Director Frisch.
In favor.
And that's unanimous. Thank you. We're on to item 2, grant and aid request for Comox Valley Exhibition Association. Thank you. Director Grieve, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As you probably know, the Comox Valley Exhibition has been going for, God, I'll get it wrong, but I think 134 years. So it's imperative that the society keep it moving forward. I know that they have faced all odds on this, and they still think they can pull off some kind of social distancing fair and make it safe for everyone. I am simply proposing to give them a grant and aid that basically covers the utilities and the rent of the facilities, which I think is $8,700 total. So pretty much $9,000. So if Mike Tremble and Keith Curry and the crew want to go ahead with it and do, then I would stand ready to at least make the CVRD portion of their costs a wash for them. So I appreciate support for $9,000 from the Area C Grant and Aid Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Morin.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, I don't know if we've had this request before during COVID, but I'm just thinking with an event that size, because you know, Music Fest and other festivals have been canceled, and the recommendation is that those kinds of festivals not occur. So I'm just wondering if we might want to request a kind of a plan from the Exhibition Association on the specifics on how they're going to carry out the festival with social distancing, much like businesses are having to do, because it is an event that tends to attract hundreds and hundreds of people, and you're only allowed to have 50, up to 50. So I just have some concerns about endorsing this without a specific plan from the association on how they're going to carry it out. Thanks.
Director Arbor.
Thank you. I thought staff might answer that, because obviously our staff would be involved in granting event permits or whatnot for them to use our facility. So
They will be required to meet all the requirements of the Island Health and any other applicable. We aren't necessarily the agency that reviews and approves those things, but certainly they will have to work through Island Health and others to demonstrate that they are capable if they're going to pull this off. Yeah.
Director Grieve.
Thank you very much. Just in response to Director Morin, generally they get $10,000 from the Electoral Area Grant and Aid, and I haven't really dealt with specifics with their executive, but my understanding is that it's about Island Health and other organizations. They have to, like any festival like that, they have to notify all emergency services and whatever, and also the city of Courtenay, because it is a fact that the exhibition grounds is inside the city of Courtenay. So there's a lot of boxes they have to check off, but they seem to feel confident they can do it in a safe manner. Thank you.
Director Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just following on that sort of thread, given that it is our facility, just wanting to confirm that the exhibition does carry their own liability insurance, just for an event like this, given the number of people and the potential for the unexpected.
Are staff aware?
Yes, like any other occupier, there's conditions to be met, such as liability insurance and covering even without COVID. Yes.
Director Frisch.
Yeah, I'd actually like to commend the Comox Valley Exhibition Association for putting the energy into tackling this, and I hope that they do find some creative ways to allow people to gather in the proper numbers and ways, and meet whatever plans and such that they have to get done. So I'll support this.
Okay, we're on receipt. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Oh, Director Killian.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. If we approve the grant and the fair doesn't actually happen because the safety plan doesn't measure up, is the money spent or do we get it back?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would remind the board that we gave Music Fest $15,000 this year to help with fixed costs. Regardless of whether the event goes forward or not, there's always costs. So I think that, you know, I can't say for absolute sure that what would happen, but I'm sure that there's probably, there's going to be needs that are hardwired to the event that will be over and above. I just tied it to the amount that the CVRD would be charging them for the use of the grounds and the utilities, you know, as sort of a rough way of giving the money. So I would think, I hope we don't have to cross that bridge, but I would think that they would probably have some fixed costs regardless. Thank you.
Director Fish.
So would this amount not be then in kind, or could it be in kind? Like, could the donation just be, you know, to cover those costs? So the money wouldn't necessarily leave the CVRD. They're not cash. Is that staff's understanding?
I'll ask Kevin DeVell, our Manager of Financial Services.
Through the chair to the director. So through the Comox Valley Exhibition Ground Service, we do invoice the Exhibition Society for the costs associated with using the facility. And so these costs would then get redirected back to that to allow them to cover those costs back to that particular service.
I assume that's clear.
Director Harper.
Yeah, no, and I'm pleased to hear that. Actually, I think it's good accounting practice to invoice and then make a decision on the contribution. On our islands, we've gotten into lots of troubles with these kinds of in-kind arrangements, and so I'm glad to see that that's the practice here.
Okay, so we're still on receipt. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Hearing none, that carries, and we're on to the requested action.
Second.
Okay, and that is the following grant and aid payable from Puntledge Black Creek Electoral Area C be approved for $9,000 for the Comox Valley Exhibition Association to assist with costs for hosting a 3-day fall fair in 2020. And this is a vote of the full board. Director Grave.
In favor.
Director Harper. Director Meir.
In favor.
Director Swift.
In favor.
Director Grant.
In favor.
Director Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Director Morin.
In favor.
Director Hillian.
In favor.
Director Frisch.
In favor.
That's unanimous. And we'll move into in camera. Thanks, everyone.
Requested.